gender parity. We enjoy the 50-50 male and female situation. We have naturally built up the culture that feels more like a family. We are very proud of and believe this standard should be every company to go for. That's gender equity. Our company benefits from a highly skilled and experienced business leader. However, it's my belief that we also need to support more women to join the IT industry. I feel it is very important that the technical skills required to design, build, and operate data center are no longer just main business area. Our company fully supports this concept. In this way, the new employee of today can be the leader in the future. As a senior leader in Korea, with the power brings about change, the most important message I can offer to the public is give every single respect to everyone. This has real consequences for the business performance. Business excellence comes from the best choice of input to get the best output. Diversity is essential for that. We are determined that Korea family will grow from the efforts of all the genders. We are proud to continue our natural policy of gender equality. For us, it's very simple. Equality is quality. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Just to give you a little bit of a secret, a Mimi. So many of you ask, how do you get these amazing men to come and speak? Well, guess what? Men who support women and girls are men who actually are dads to girls. So there you go, that's a secret. Thank you, Stephen. All right, so our next speaker, all right, Fernando, we've come a very long ways. Thank you so much for all your support. Fernando Valina, Chairman of ExxonMobil, welcome, please.
Good morning, everybody. Shao Hao. I have to start with a complaint. Sucheng, you put me behind Stephen and Bill, and they have stolen about 50% of what I was planning to say. Bill is actually a colleague. We work in the same industry, so he actually had a couple of examples that I was planning to bring forward. And I'm a numbers guy. I had a lot of statistics, and Stephen quoted already about 50% of those. So I'm going to try to improvise a bit. I will still go through the speech. I'll change some of the examples. I will use some data that was not used by Stephen before, and hopefully will still make sense. So please have patience with me. And next time, I go first. Okay. So listen, it's a pleasure to be here today to talk about gender equality in the workplace. Gender equality should be actually a simple concept to grasp. It's a matter of human dignity. It's one of the United Nations sustainability goals. And it's present when everybody has the same rights, the same responsibilities and opportunities, independent of gender. So it is quite basic. It's quite easy to understand. However, if we take a look today at gender equality in the workplace, what do we find? And now I'm going to skip about 50% of the names and the numbers that Stephen gave us. If you look at the Fortune 500 list, 5% of the CEOs in that list today are women, which means by definition that 95% are not. And in fact, there is a common joke going around saying that if you're a male and your name is John, you have as many chances as any woman to become the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, because that's the number of CEOs that equal the number of female CEOs in that list. In the same list, 7% of the top executives are women, and about 90% of the board members of those companies are also females. So there's a long, long way to go when it comes to having a decent representation, let alone parity, at the biggest companies in the world. So why is this? Women have, in many countries, approximately the same access to higher education as men. But even in the countries when this happens, they are not represented proportionally at the highest levels of companies. This is what McKinsey calls the leaky pipeline. Gender diversity has been improving over time, slowly, but very limited progress has been made since 2015, which is the year when gender equality was included in the list of the United Nations Sustainability Goals. So one of the questions I was given by Su Chen and her team was, why should males be concerned with advancing gender equality? And as Bill said, in my case also, you have professional reasons and you have personal reasons to be concerned about it. First, from a professional point of view, even if you leave aside the questions of ethics, of right and wrong, and Bill also talked about it, discrimination, which is, by the way, illegal in the majority of countries, research shows that diversity improves corporations' results. So, in short, gender diversity is actually good for business. And given that most business leaders today are men, it means that men, by definition, are well positioned to do something about it. And as business leaders, it simply falls upon us to do something about it. So some more supporting data, and again, I had 6 numbers. Stephen kindly stole 3 of them, so I'm going to give you just 3. Increasing the number of women managers by 2.5% raises innovation revenues by 1%. This is also data from McKinsey from a study in 2019. Companies that are in the first quartile in terms of gender diversity outperform those in the fourth quartile by 17%. This is financial results when you look at the bottom line. And by the way, if you score high in both gender diversity and ethnic diversity, you do even better in terms of differentiating your results. And companies with at least 3 women on the board are also measurably better financially when compared to the rest of companies. Now, we need to be careful. It doesn't necessarily mean that 3 is the magic number, and if you have 3 women in your board, there is a consequence in your earnings. I think it's probably more related to the fact that companies that have, they care about diversity and they have the right processes, that tends to percolate all the way up to the organization, including the board, and that's reflected also in the results. But it is a fact, and it is math. So all this is actually very compelling evidence that shows that gender equality is good for business. And in my mind, at least, making this very clear business case is the most important thing that you can do in business to help gender equality. You know, males and females will see things in different ways. And in fact, there is also research that shows that when talking about gender equality, men perceive the issue differently than female. So you may actually, even if you have the best intentions as a male business leader, you may be actually addressing the wrong problem if you are not thinking the problem is the same as your female colleagues. And notably, if you look at the business today, about 50% of men will think that women are appropriately represented in leadership positions in a company that has 10% of women in leadership positions. That in itself is a problem. And by the way, so that you know, 33% of women will think the same, which is pretty amazing to me. The fact that when you have 10% of women leaders, 1/3 of the women in that company will actually think that that's pretty much okay. So building, in my opinion, this very compelling case that gender diversity is just good for business is probably the most important step that you can make to address gender equality in the workplace. Because once that case is made, once your leadership is convinced, the rest follows. You will have the right policies, you will have the right metrics, you will work for it because it is good for your company and you actually get paid to outcompete your competitors out there. So, you know, very simply, from a business point of view, I take it upon myself to promote gender equality because it's just good for my company and it's good to outperform my competitors. It's very, very simple. And it's a much easier argument to make of right and wrong where people will have different views, so I tend to stick to this particular point. And then, like Bill said, there's always personal reasons also. So I happen to have 2 daughters. They are, both of them, starting their professional careers about now. And I just hate to think that they are not going to be able to do the best that they can because they don't have the same opportunities as everybody else. Like every father or like every mother, I just want them to do the best that they can and be limited only by their capabilities, their ambitions, and their preferences, and nothing else. And that is just not the case today. So, you know, it's from my point of view, at least, it's a good reason to do whatever it is that I can to help in this area. So what are the obstacles? What is it that we can do to help as companies and as individuals? The issues, again, if you look at different research, are typically the same around the world. There are double standards. Women are typically held to a higher standard than men. And by the way, women also typically hold themselves to a higher standard than men. There's a lack of role models. Again, a fact of life is that today most of the male leaders and people in the higher levels of organizations are men. Different perceptions, as I said, by men and women of the reasons that prevent equality. And something which I never could quite understood, but it's the fact that men seem to network and form alliances more frequently and effectively than women, and that hinders, in some cases, progress within the workplace. So what can we do as companies? Businesses should value diversity, again, because it is in their own interest. It's, if you don't care about the ethics or you're not convinced about the right and wrong argument, just do it because it's good for your company. They should, by definition, ensure equal pay for equal work. We should train all employees to recognize and prevent gender bias, and we need to include metrics and diversity in our scorecards. And if you're a business leader, whether you're a male or a female, we should promote, support, and enforce policies that promote flexibility, because that's important for women that typically shoulder a disproportionate amount of work outside of the workplace, and therefore tend to value more flexibility than male. We need to recruit at parity, by definition, whenever that is possible. And something that is also important, women seem to value, again, according to surveys, purpose in their jobs even more than men do. So establishing a compelling value proposition for your company, establishing a higher purpose for your company, and making sure that you explain that to your employees is one of the ways to retain your female employees and to motivate and empower them. Now, as individuals, these are companies, but as individuals, we should call out double standards when we see them. This is not only acceptable, it's actually necessary. These double standards, in many cases, are the result of unconscious biases, and therefore it's actually necessary to bring them to light. There's also nothing wrong with what I call playing the game of networks and alliances. It is an effective way to get things done,